Hello everybody, my name is Ian Kirkpatrick. I'm an author, robot, and loin streamer, and today I wanted to have a little bit of kind of a discussion-ish of something I feel like I've noticed, and obviously it's not going to be like a this is the only way that it is or this is all that exists, but I like to make observations and patterns and understand behavior. And so I want to share some of the observations that I've made recently about readers and get your opinion on them. So again, this isn't going to be a coverall for all readers, but I have discovered, or what I think is, I have tracked, I don't know, I have observed two very distinct moods for different types of readers. And that's not to say there are not more than these two moods or these two types of readers, but I think these two are very distinct and it lends to a different sort of experience with books. So I'm going to look forward to the conversation with you guys because all I want to do is present the observations that I've had, and then hopefully we can have some cool conversations down in the comments below with your guys' thoughts on what it is I think I've seen. Yeah, because it was a lot of fun talking, like seeing your guys' thought, because it was a lot of fun seeing what you guys thought about self-inserts on that self-insert video. And so I'm going to present this and hopefully we can have some chill conversations and just swap ideas in the same cool way. But before we get started, a couple of things. Number one, if you enjoy this channel and enjoy what I do here, please hit that like button, hit subscribe, come back for more, and if you have anything that you would like me to cover or talk about on the channel, let me know in the comments down below, or feel free to message me through the many facets that there are to message me with the topics you're thinking. Number two, if you'd like to be featured on this channel, there are two ways to do it. Check out the Fresh Meat feature if you would like to have the first chapter of your novel read on this channel. And that's for published works or pre-sale works only, so that more people can find your book for sale and then go and read more of it. And then the other one is Lamoy, the monthly prompt contest on this channel, always the first video of the month, so check that out if you're interested. Finally, and I'm sure that nobody cares, but merch has arrived. I am wearing it right now. Is that too tacky? So we've got the Hello Boomers shirt. Yes, there is a hoodie for a book that probably nobody is going to read. Can you guess? Can you guess which one it is? I'll show you the back of the shirt. It'll tell you. It'll show you. We got the boom boom boom. Salute. Salute. And this is for my new book coming out May 1st, Boom Boom Boom, a satire about a Ukrainian YouTuber who does explosions. Of course, he calls his subscribers boomers, and there's definitely some wordplay with that. So that's also in the description below if you're interested. But again, it's a shirt. I just unironically wanted to wear a shirt that said Hello Boomers on it, okay? And it's so cute. It's got a little thumb up for a period at the end there. Anyway, like I said, for a book probably nobody's going to read. But if you want to read it, that's also on NetGalley for ARCs. So if you want to check that out, also in the description down below. So with all of that said, let's go ahead and get into the topic. I never really put a whole lot of thought into this before, the different experiences readers have with books, until I published and I started seeing really what felt like different expectations from different readers based on the reviews that were posted. And it's very interesting to me. So one review comment that I've never really understood, or when other people are talking about books in general, is this need to connect to a character emotionally. I've never really understood that because I don't personally emotionally connect or emote with people in that way. I have a very high threshold for an emotional response, and I don't bond with people on that sort of emotional level on that regular way. So when I'm reading a book, I don't empathize with the characters. I don't get anything out of thinking that I'm the characters, and I never try to be the characters, which, you know, to my detriment might be one of the reasons why I go into books that are clearly illogical but are for emotional payoff, because I don't have an emotional experience with books. Not only in reviews, but in talking with some of my other writing friends who do go through emotional experiences while they're writing, or who do go through emotional experiences while they're reading, I've come to understand that there is a very specific window of people that read specifically for that emotional experience that they hope to derive from a book. Meanwhile, there are also those people that go into a book without the expectations of feeling an emotional drive for that character. So through further observation in the discourse and in reviews and in conversation, I've come up with what I've labeled the two distinct book reader types. It's the voyeur and the escapist. So to break those down a little further, what I'm going to be, and just know that these are not technical terms, these are just like labels which I have created in order to better understand the approach of these two different styles of readers. And again, I don't think these are the only two styles of readers there are, but they're very distinct and they're very opposite. And so I wanted to present these ideas to you guys and see what you thought about it. So with the escapist reader, somebody is going into a book to have an experience. They want to put on the skin of the main character. Typically they want to go on an adventure or fall in love or, feel good or maybe cry, like have a really tragic thing, but it's all in the name of love. They want to very emotionally connect with that character and live through that character and basically put on somebody else's skin and be like, that's who I want to be. I think this is also how you end up with characters that are super, super badass that can't do any wrong, because that character was written by the author as an avatar for them to go and live out a fantasy, some crazy adventure, and so they always must win. And they must also be likable, which I think also comes across when it can be in self-insert fics and it can be in Mary Sue fics, but when you have like all of the surrounding characters telling the main character how amazing they are and how wonderful they are and everybody just loves them, it's an experience to allow the reader and the writer to escape. To just go live in a fantasy for a little while, go on this journey, have all of the men fall in love with them if that was the story, and get to the end. And so it is very important to these readers to be able to emotionally connect with that character. They have to be a certain type of likable. They have to be a certain type of personality. They have to have certain interactions with the people around them within the story that makes them relatable to that person. And there are things that I'm not entirely sure yet what they are that stop this population from being able to empathize with characters that don't quite fit that build. And it would be interesting to me to understand more what people look for in characters they're trying to empathize with, and main characters especially they want to empathize with, because I don't have that experience. So then on the flip side, you have the voyeur, who goes into a book not necessarily to feel escapism from reality or to go through an adventure or a fantasy to get out of like the politics and the stressors of the real world and just do something crazy, like 50 Shades of Grey. The voyeur is going to be somebody that goes into a book with the desire to see a life that they haven't lived, to see a world that they haven't seen, to see the logical decisions and the either build or the downfall of a person or community or kingdom. Like nobody, I'm not going to say nobody, because when you say absolutes, they always come and bite you in the butt. But very few regular people open American Psycho with the hopes of becoming Patrick Bateman for a couple of hours and escape using American Psycho as an escapist adventure. What's actually typically happening when you pick up something like American Psycho is you're looking into a life that you've never lived, that you will probably never get to live, and trying to see how somebody else makes decisions. This very specific person. How does this American New York stockbroker, I'm sure I got something in that list of words wrong. How does this guy make decisions, and how did he become the American Psycho? How is his psyche messed up? So you're becoming a voyeur and peeking into this person's life and seeing all of the bad decisions that they make and all of the crimes that they do, and you're not looking for an emotional payoff. You're just looking for some logical reasoning and some rationale understanding. Whereas an escapist reader is looking to emotionally connect with a character. Okay, so this is where the two types of readers really split off. Is the voyeur is usually looking for a logical consistency and rationale through that character, the decisions, the choices, and the world responding to the choices made by the character. However, the escapist may not be as logically tied to the story because they are emotionally tied to the story. So they're going to allow more logical So they're going to allow more illogical things to happen and more things to just work out because it said so, because there's an emotional connection to the story. What my understanding is, when you're emotionally engaged, you don't necessarily think as logically. And when you're logically engaged, you're usually not responding emotionally. Now, maybe that's all a bunch of hoopla, but I've had that experience in general. So again, take that as you will, and I'd love to hear your comments on the subject. But that would explain to me why, if a voyeur goes into an escapist book, they're going to come up with a lot more problems with the text and in analyzing the text, because they're not emotionally invested. So instead, they're looking at the rationale and the reasoning and the logic behind everything that's put into the story, and it's not making sense because they are not invested emotionally. Meanwhile, an escapist reader may pick up a voyeuristic style book and be very disappointed because they could not connect to any of the characters and they wanted that emotional journey and that emotional payoff. Does that make sense? Another example for the voyeuristic reader would also be true crime, because typically you're not opening a true crime book in order to feel like you are that person doing those things. Is you want a look into their life, into their choices, into how they came to be what they are and what it is they're seeing. And voyeuristic fiction, or fiction that leans more towards the voyeuristic reader, may be more on the literary side, though I'm not saying you can't have emotional payoff in literary fiction, because I do think that you can have that. But I do think that stories that are exploring the human element, or the good and evil inside of people, or difficult questions or difficult situations about human life, may not be as comfortable for an escapist to cling into. So they may see a troubled main character that has just the right troubles that makes them unable to empathize with that main character, and so they're not going to get the same payoff because they didn't get to bond with that character in the same way. Does that make sense? And I think people can switch modes if they allow themselves to. I'm way too much of a logical brain without an emotional response. Not that I don't have emotions, but I have a high threshold to have an emotional response, and it just doesn't come out of books. But I think that you can switch your brain back and forth as long as I don't think any reader is stuck being a voyeur or escapist totally. It's if you're able to train yourself to prepare for whether you're reading something emotional versus voyeuristic. Now, some people may just be straight up more likely to not have emotional responses in general, so they may have a more difficult time becoming an escapist, like me, and other people may have a difficult time just letting their emotions be their guide, so they may have a more difficult time getting into the escapist books for the emotional payoff. But I do think that it is something that you can be versatile in. It just depends on the individual. Of a further not a subset of this, but another idea that kind of goes along with this is the mood or mindset that somebody might be in. And this is completely separate from the voyeurist versus the escapist, though your mood probably definitely determines which one you're going to want to be in, because some people just want to have like a happy love story, or have a happy triumphant story, or something like that, or they want to go and read about lives. But another thing to consider is these two types of moods that I'm thinking of for when you pick up a book. And one is the challenging mood read, and the other one is the chill mood read. And somebody who's in a challenging reading mood might be more interested in picking up difficult books, or the voyeuristic books, or books with more allegory that they're going to have to pick apart and maybe not be so emotionally invested in the story, because they want to pick apart the different elements of the book for the challenge of it. And that does take more effort, because I at least for me, okay, I'm not always in the mood to read difficult text that may have difficult verbiage, or reading like Butcher Boy. I don't even know where that book is. I think I put it back on the shelf. I bought that months ago thinking that I was going to read it immediately because it was like short and it sounded really, really interesting. But the syntax in it is more difficult to get into because it is so Irish. Like, it is informal, there we go. It is informal Irish. That is just, the grammar is all over the place, run on sentences. But if you listen to it, or if you speak it out loud, you can very clearly hear the Irish way that that character is talking. But it is a harder read because the syntax is so characterized. And when I put that book over here, I started reading it and I got a couple pages in, or a couple chapters in, a couple sections in. I don't think it has chapters because it's kind of like a run on. And I was like, I don't think that I am in the mood to be able to read something this difficult, which also includes, I think there's references to the IRA in it, and a couple of social political problems in it that I'm not going to necessarily be aware of, because I'm not that aware of social and political problems in Ireland, especially what was going to be written about in 1992 or published in a book, or put in a published book in 1992. So that makes following along that story just a little bit more difficult. And so you have to be in a certain mood to want to read challenging books, or to reread books that you've already read, in hopes of drawing out more context or ideas from those books. The other common, I should say, these are common moods. The other really common reading mood is the chill read, where you're just reading something because you either like it, you swoon at it, it's in your like guilty pleasure genre, or you just think that it's gonna be like super easy read. Like when I read the Hellfire Club, what is it, Wicked Idol, for this channel, I was on night shift, and it was like after about 1 a.m. and when the delusional late night thing started hitting, I couldn't really read a difficult text or write a whole lot of stuff, and so my focus was just sort of waning. And I had that on my Kindle app because it was in a BookBub email saying, hey, this is free. And so I was like, well, why not? And that's how I get a handful of books. And I just dropped them in there. And I was like, this should be an easy read. And I mean, it was very easy to read. There is a big difference between super easy to read text and not, in my opinion. Like, we've been reading Ice Planet Barbarians on Year of the Authors channel, and the writing in that book makes it super easy to read. And that's not saying that it is dumbed down or anything, but there is just like a voice, and Ruby Dixon has a very readable voice that makes it very enjoyable to just be it's really conversational, I should say. She's making a lot of jokes, and she's just making quips, and she's just got average language being used between the girls and in the narrative, and it makes it super easy to read. And a lot of the time when you're doing a chill read, you kind of just, I think people just tend toward what makes them comfortable, what they know well, and maybe it's a whole genre, or maybe it's a couple of genres, or maybe it's a typical author that they really, really like to go to. There are so many different ways that something could fall into the challenging read or the chill read. It all depends on just who you are as a person. But I do think those are two very different reading moods that also follow behind two very different reader mindsets, which are the voyeur, who wants to experience a life unlike themselves and, you know, maybe not cast judgment, maybe cast judgment. And then there's the escapist, who wants to go on an adventure. And I think if you're looking at book reviews, you can really see the difference between the types of, the way somebody approached a book when they went in to read it by the way that they have responded to the book. So I don't think I can explain this any better right now. Maybe if I just wrote it all down to have something a little more cohesive, but I'm trying to avoid saying like any sorts of absolutes, because I don't want to say definitively like this and this and this. It's just an observation that I've had through experiences and reading and talking, and I wanted to share it with you guys to see what you guys thought. Have you experienced these? Do you recognize in yourself voyeuristic tendencies versus escapist tendencies? And there is no better way to read. These are just different ways of approaching a book, and I think it's important to have discussions about these different approaches and these different styles of reading so that we can better understand not only each other, but also the books that we're consuming and the experiences that we're having, especially with the same book when they are so drastically different. I think it's super interesting. I love understanding how people work and how they think. And so, you know, that's really what inspires something like this. So I'm going to end it there. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. I'm looking forward to your thoughts. And with all that said, thank you so much for watching. Have a great weekend and don't die.
Was that Wayland Cross in the trunk? Do you know, or is that something that's still being figured out?
The person in the trunk was not Wayland Cross.
Is he in trouble?
We don't know who did it, but as the owner of the car, the longer he's missing, the worse it looks for him.
Cross isn't a killer. For the last couple of years, the average number of murders in Baltimore has been over 300, and it's been going up. Mind you, that's only whatever the badges count as official murder, and believe me, there are people that don't count when they die. Wayland? If you're down here, tell me. I'm not talking to the badges, I've been looking for you. They found a body in your trunk. Why? Did you do that? To the left, plain black letters read along the wall, "You walked in the corridor. Once that ends, you chose the dark is on the right." My vision goes blurry, flickers black and black and black for longer intervals until I can't see anything at all. I'm not screaming anymore, but my voice echoes back to me. Where the hell am I? You're dead, Josephine. Even smart people do stupid shit sometimes, right?